Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. What do you think when you hear the word PR? I know sometimes I wonder, well, is it meant for me? Should I do it? Do I have enough revenue to do it? Am I big enough to do it? Or do I just go and do it myself, network? I don't even know what PR means sometimes. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that think the same way. Well, today on Law Chat, we have Alessandra Seca. She's a PR expert. She is from Canada, and we had the most amazing chat right before we started. And I had to remember that we're actually here for this interview as well. But she is a full service public relations and event planning powerhouse. And I can tell you, she truly is a magnet because her personality was so contagious when we first started talking. And I just can't wait for her to share her journey and some of business PR tips with us today. Welcome, Alessandra.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I know. I mean, I gave a super brief description and introduction. I know there's so much more behind you and your business. So when I was reading about you, how you described yourself as what I loved, born and bred in a city of opportunity and grind. I mean, I just love that. So let's start from there. What does that
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, of course. So a little bit of background. I'm based in Toronto, in Canada, which is pretty much the hub for. I don't even want to say this, but I'm going to say it: the New York of Canada, basically. Like all of our media stations broadcast, or the majority of them broadcast nationally from here. We have all of the bases here, all the big agencies. That's not to say that there are some amazing places in other parts of Canada, but just to say, just to kind of compare it. So Toronto is a wonderful city. It's very multicultural, but there's also a lot of competition. So you have to figure out how to grind and how to stand out in this industry, in this city. So I've always been a hard worker. I very much believe in work-life balance, but I've also always been a hard worker. Like it's a holiday here right now, but I'm always happy to do my work and do everything that I can do to elevate my business and elevate other people and help other people. So I guess that's kind of where that comes from.
I love that. And I think it shows just, even just if someone were to get onto your website and just kind of peruse it, I think that speaks volumes as also that you love what you do. You have a super passion for it, but then you also work hard for your clients. And I think that's fantastic. And so let's kind of start from the beginning though. How did you fall into PR and how did that happen?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I actually most people don't know what PR is, and I didn't. To be honest, when I was, you're 17 years old, you got to figure out what you're doing with the rest of your life, going to college or university, whatever. And it's really funny because I had literally no clue what I wanted to do. I was confused. I was stuck. I knew I really was attracted to the media. I was really into that. So I actually started out in television broadcasting, thinking I wanted to work in the news. And I got lucky enough to intern at a massive media station, a news station here in Toronto. And I learned very quickly that I did not want to do that. I loved it. And it was wonderful. But I realized that I actually preferred, as much as I thought I wanted to work behind the scenes and editing and producing and that side of the world, I actually realized very quickly that I preferred the journalism aspect of it. I preferred the side where I was doing the research and really executing the story, but still wasn't 100% sold. And sitting on a news desk, I started talking to a lot of PR people. And that's where I got that, idea of I could totally do this. I really love it. So I changed gears and I started focusing on that. And coming out of school, I actually took a very untraditional route. Most people would go into a college program for a year and a half, 2 years, even 3, and just graduate with a PR certificate. I did the full kit and caboodle. I did 4 years of university, 2 years of college before that, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I came out of it, I didn't have that PR certificate. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't getting hired at agencies. And I'm like, but I know I can do it. I know I can do it. Because in university, they don't teach you. They teach you theory. They teach you about, policy and stuff like that. And it's great, but it didn't help me the way that it should have. Let's just put it that way. So I actually was very lucky enough to get approached by a family friend who was starting a massive consumer show downtown Toronto. Called the Gentleman's Expo at the time. And it was a show targeted to men who want to be gentlemen, basically, not what most people think of, basically they wanted, and it was my job. They brought me on to do all the public relations for it. And it was my job to tell the story the right way. And within I worked there for 3 years. I absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful experience. Taught me a lot about PR, taught me a lot about storytelling. So
Wait, can I just stop you for a second? I missed it in between. I missed it. So when you say you like gentlemen with quotes around it, right?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to just straight up say it. Basically, a lot of people would come back to me and be like, but are there strippers and motorcycles? And there's nothing wrong with that. But no, there definitely was not. It was all about tailored suits and men grooming care.
Wow.
And very extravagant, higher end, alcohol brands, serving. It was all tailored around men being gentlemen. We had a sexologist come in and talk to teach men, certain things about women. And we had it was really,
that's incredible.
It was amazing. It was focused on men being better and teaching them how to be better. But there was also a lot of business aspects of it. We had a Dragon's Den style, Shark Tank style thing for startups where they would pitch actual people from Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version of Shark Tank, who would come on with massive multimillionaires sitting there and pitching their stories to them, right? So it was really cool. There was cooking. There was a cooking stage where we had teaching men how to cook. It was very much that. And again, all of that to say that it was my job to tell that story as opposed to the automatic thought of, which is unfortunate, right? But the automatic thought of what people thought it was going to be. So I started out there and it was a wonderful experience. And I had not had the traditional PR training that, you got in college. And it was really funny because I left, tried to get a job in agency. For those who don't know, there's agency, which is you basically work under a public relations agency and you have multiple clients underneath you that you do PR for. Or you can work in corporate where you work in-house. So for example, if I'm working in an agency, I can work with multiple clients. I can work with everybody from the city of Toronto to an alcohol brand to small businesses, which is what I do. I actually focus mostly on small to medium-sized businesses. Or you can work in corporate where you work in-house at MasterCard, for example. So that's the difference when I say agency and corporate. So I was trying to get into the agency world and I wasn't getting hired because they were like, oh, you don't know, you don't have your college degree. I'm like, but I've been doing this for years. I know what I'm doing. So I actually ended up going back to college, loved it. It was, I don't want to say I didn't learn more. I had already done it. So it was just kind of get that. I went in with the mentality that I'm going to get this piece of paper and I'm going to get out. And it ended up happening that I met the most amazing people. And I had decided 3 days before the course started to go into it. went into it, met the most amazing people, and thankfully for them, like, or for me, like I actually still am very much in touch with them. Left there, and that was it. My career in PR was set. Like I started working
Wow.
in with a lot of different agencies and a lot of different clients in my time. So yeah.
That must have been so challenging. So how, in the sense of like having to go back to school, even though you had the experience, so what was that like at that time? And how did you, I mean, how did you feel? And then obviously you took action to fix that feeling, but how many years of experience did you have prior to you going back to school?
Yeah, you're 100% right. It was very strange. So I had 3 years out of school in the field of experience. I had interned, and I was very lucky that I had a sister who kind of pushed me to do this. My sister, when I was in university, was like, take the days that you're not working. And I'm going to say this to anyone who is in college or wherever that doesn't have an internship program built into their schooling. It does not matter what you're doing. Volunteer, intern, take that day off. I know you want that day off to sleep or whatever, recover, but take that day and go intern, because that is what taught me what I wanted to do. That was when I was working at that broadcast station, right? Like one day a week, I would work there from 10 to 6, go on site with the reporters, but it taught me very quickly that that wasn't the route I wanted to take. Loved it, great experience, helped me in my career, but it taught me a lot of things. So I had interned for years, all through university and college, and then I worked 3 years. And you're right, it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was discouraging
Yeah.
to get all those no's and to have to go back. And but I was fortunate enough that I had found a program that was condensed, which was intense, but condensed. And I loved it. I met so many great people and so many great friends. And it almost made me realize that, like, yeah, I can do this. And I already knew what I was talking about, and it was getting through that 8 months to a year of, okay, I'm going to get this piece of paper and be done with it because I do know what I'm doing. And I think it gave me that extra confidence to be able to move forward in my career.
I think that's so wonderful because I always believe that nothing is a coincidence. There is a reason for everything.
Yeah.
And going back to your advice actually to college students is internships are priceless. Whether you're getting paid, even if you're in a master's program or postgraduate program, whatever, even if you're not getting paid, if it is something that you truly want to be in, the area that you want to be in, that experience is priceless. And you just gain so much more knowledge and you gain tangible experience that you won't be able to get in a educational environment. So 100%, I think that is such great advice out there. Even if you're not a college student and you're wanting to
Yeah.
change and you're wanting to, diversify or pivot in your business, that you're scared, start interning, start getting those extra jobs on the side, do it for free, even if you have to. I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation.
Yeah, well, you're 100% right. And like, first of all, it gives you that experience to, I'm a big believer in education. I think post-education is amazing, and I think everyone should do it. I hate school. I absolutely hate school. Like, in all honesty, if my parents were not like scary Italian people who probably would have like yelled at me for leaving, I probably would not have finished high school. I hated, hate. It's not in me. I'm not one of those kids. And I did like 10 years post-grad. But anyway, but I think it's great. I think school is good. I'm not a learner in a traditional sense. Like, I need to physically do something. So that's why I struggled so much in school.
Yeah.
But That being said, that experience of interning actually really showed me that I loved to do something or I didn't. And it didn't make me waste my time after. And a big important thing for me was to love my career, even when I was a kid. I always wanted to love what I was going to do because I've seen what it does to people who don't. And if I went down that road, I had, okay, so fine. I wasted 4 months of my life interning somewhere where instead of, and realizing I didn't like it versus years and years of my life to be stuck at a certain age being like, oh God, what am I going to do?
Right. That's sage advice. Very good. I love it.
Thank you. I'm very blunt. Blunt about it.
So when you got out of college, when you got out of the second time you went in and you got your PR degrees, and then you finished that and completed it, did you join an agency or did you just start your own business at that time?
No, I joined agency. I started working with a very small, I always worked on the boutique side, and partially for that reason was choice. I always wanted to work on the smaller end because I just really liked the clients that they worked. Don't get me wrong, like I do some other work with bigger clients. I love it. Like it's a lot of fun, but the smaller stuff always kind of felt more rewarding to me. And that's where I built my business on, was working with those smaller to medium-sized businesses who were getting ignored by the big agencies. And not on purpose. It's literally they don't have the capacity and the budgets aren't there. And there's a lot of things involved there that I can understand from a bigger agency perspective why it just doesn't make sense on either side. Also, the smaller businesses would end up getting ignored again, and not by fault of the agency. It was just there was so much else going on. So I wanted to open up a business that catered to that. But that being said, I had worked on smaller boutique agencies, and it was funny because I always progressed very quickly. I started out, for example, as an account coordinator at an agency called Liquid at the time. And I started out as an account coordinator, and within a year and a half, I was a manager/director of the agency, because that also came from, they hired me on as someone who just came out of school, right? But realized very quickly that I had the capacity to do much more. And it was an amazing experience. And all of my experiences have been great. My last job before this, I was brought on to run an agency side that they wanted to open in another company. And so I did that for a little bit and then realized okay, this is great, but I'm capping myself here. It was a great job, but I'm running this and I'm capping myself at a salary. I'm capping my abilities because I'm not the owner. I can't make the final decisions.
Yeah.
So why am I doing this for someone else when I could just be doing it for myself and doing it the way I want to and catering to the clients that I want to? And that's how Seca & Co was born.
Wow. That takes a lot of boldness to realize that and also take that step, because that could be hard. So in the journey where you were working for someone else, what were some of the challenges that you faced, whether it was limiting beliefs or imposter syndrome or something else? What were some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
I suffer from imposter syndrome a lot. It's really funny. I come across as very bubbly and confident, whatever. And I am it for the most part. But there is at least 2 or 3 times a day where I sit there going, okay, what am I doing? And I think that comes from being the youngest of 4 girls, being the accident youngest of 4 girls. My family is very big and my youngest sister is 11 years older than me. So being, in that position my whole life, or maybe even being a woman, looking younger than I am, sometimes I get that a lot. So it's always that mentality in the back of my head. Am I going to be taken seriously? Even when I'm in meetings, even when I'm having conversations with people, I have that thought in the back of my head, am I being taken seriously? Which is ridiculous and that's kind of the way that I overcome a lot of that, is thinking back to all the things that I have done. Thinking back to, the fact that I started a business, okay, that aside, but even just in life, these campaigns that I've worked on, these successes that I've had in my career. And I realize that it's insane to even think that I'm less than, but it's that little voice in the back of your head that always comes up, right?
Yeah.
So that's even taking a podcast interview, I'm like, oh God, why do they want to talk to me? Like, who the hell am I? Right. And
Yeah.
and then I think about it and I'm like, yeah, I've done some really cool things.
Mhm.
So why, and maybe that sounds cocky, but like, I don't, it is what it is, right? Like, if you can't be proud of your own accomplishments, what can you be proud of? Right.
Absolutely. I think, we need to be our biggest cheerleaders, and it is so easy to become our biggest critic. And so it's very important to pause, and having even that sense to be thoughtful about it and to pause is one step ahead of the game,
Hmm.
winning over those limiting beliefs that we might have for ourselves. Like, so to pause, to reflect, and to also acknowledge all of the achievements that we've had and the things that we are doing and the dreams that we have also. And so, I always say there's only one of you. Like, I have some clients that come in and they're like, or even friends, we're talking and they're like, well, all these other people are doing this, or I'm scared someone might steal this. I'm like, well, there's only one of you though. They can't steal you. They can't steal
Yeah.
your voice. They can't steal your mind. They can't steal your thoughts. Only you are unique to you. And that's what you're bringing first and foremost to the table.
You're right. And like in my industry too, it's if you unfortunately in PR we get a big stigma. We get a big stigma of, being a certain, it's a stereotype of being a certain way, the blonde hair with the which is hilarious because my hair is almost blonde now, with the, turtlenecks and the sunglasses and the girls you see on television, and listen, like people compare me to Samantha Jones. I'm like, down. I love her. But it's not always like that. And
Yeah.
everybody is very different. You have to have a personality in this industry to really make it because this industry is a lot about relationships.
Yeah.
And part back to your question before about how did I fall into PR was, again, my sister would say to me, like, why don't you get into public relations? Like, you would be really great at it. You're such a good people person. And then I started to look into it as well. And then again, trailed down that road of my internships. But all of that to say that relationships and your personality and being true to yourself and continuing to be true to yourself is one of the most important things in this industry in public relations
Yeah.
specifically. And I think that's fair for everything, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I agree. And so you started Seika and Co. And when you started that, was it something that was like, I'm done 9 to 5, done with you, I'm starting this? Or did you start it on the side and then eventually 100% you dove into it?
Oh no, I quit. oh, I quit and just went for it. It was something that I had in the back of my head for a little bit. And I was lucky enough to have a lot of support around me. My fiance is fantastic. I'm very lucky. And he was very much like, what the hell are you doing? And he's a business owner as well, right? So he was like, you're fine. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My father started a plumbing and sheet metal company here when he immigrated. Well, plumbing first when he immigrated to Canada, obviously years after working. But my point is, he did it. I have a sister who opened her own travel agency. Like we are an entrepreneurial family by nature. And then so it was one of those things where I'm like, I know that if I try to do this on the side, it's going to take me much longer. Also, I wanted to be ethical about it. Like, to be completely honest, I wanted to be ethical about it. Like, I was working at another agency at the time. I wasn't going to do my own PR
Right.
under contract, right? Like, I felt icky
That's a
about
great
that.
point.
So,
That's a
well,
great point, by the way.
I didn't even think about that, but it's true, right? Like, ethically,
Yeah.
I just couldn't bring myself to do that. I thought it was gross. And obviously there was even clauses in the contract that I was like, absolutely. Like, I wouldn't even question that.
Yeah.
So I decided to separate myself completely. And I also felt that I needed to dedicate myself 100% to it. Now, that being said, I was in a comfortable position at the time. I was able to do what I did. I had saved for it. I had prepared myself for it.
Mhm.
COVID was not really great. Like, I started my business in May of 2019
Mm.
and everything was amazing last year. Or the first, obviously, we all know as business owners that the first year is always a little bit, there's that build. You're not really paying yourself. There's that time to make the money. And then COVID hit.
Mhm.
And that was quite the experience, to say the least. I went from really building up my business, because it was what, 8 months in or something. That was when the attention was really getting to me,
Right.
and building. And then all of a sudden everything just dead stopped.
Mm.
And I was working on with clients a lot on the lifestyle fashion side, lifestyle, beauty, fashion, hospitality. So everything kind of just went like full stop.
Right.
And that was an experience, definitely. Again, I was fortunate enough and privileged enough to be in a position that I was okay. I was stable, but it was a scary point.
But
But it definitely taught me
how
a
did
lot.
you manage the challenges that came with COVID and, clients dropping because they just couldn't afford you anymore? I'm assuming that. But
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so how did you handle that? And what were some of the things that you did in order to maybe cushion yourself a little bit more?
I'll be honest, I got very lucky. Well, in the beginning, it was scary. The first few weeks, we all thought it was going to be 2 weeks, right? Remember in the beginning, it was like, yeah, it'll be over in 2 weeks. I don't know what made us think that, but anyway. So it was like, okay, great. It's a little vacation. Like,
Right.
we'll revisit this. And a lot of my clients either dropped off because they couldn't afford, or it just wasn't an appropriate time to tell their story,
Right.
right? Especially at the time, the media was just not focused on anything but
Mhm.
COVID, and understandably so. It was insensitive
Yeah.
to go out with anything else. So the beginning was very interesting. It was very uncomfortable. It was uncertain. I think everyone went through that.
Hmm.
And then it was later on that it really started to get really stressful. So here in Canada, I would argue even in the US, because we actually had just gotten back from vacation in the US on like March 8th, and the 15th, everything shut down here. So it was really quick. And for us, it was first few weeks again kind of strange, and then all of a sudden it was really depressing, just to put it that way. I was at a standstill in my business. I was scared. Again, same with my fiance. Like, I know that's irrelevant to the topic, but he's in construction, so it was very like both of us were home and we're like, oh, what are we doing with ourselves, and
Hmm.
what's happening? And it was a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of, I would wake up at like 10 o'clock because I didn't have to work. I'd go to sleep at like 3 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 10, and my whole schedule was messed up. And one day I woke up and I thought, no, I can't do this anymore. It's not going to happen. So I actually started working out. I started deliberately going to bed at, okay, I'm a night owl. I went to bed at like 11, so I would wake up at 7. I started working on my marketing. I would sit at my desk every morning, even if I didn't have client work. I would sit at my desk every morning until whatever time, and get myself into that mentality that I was actually
Hmm.
doing something.
Hmm.
And how did I do it? Okay, I worked on back end business stuff. I fixed my website. I changed my processes, and I just worked on organization for my business, the behind the scenes internal stuff. I started building an social media presence. I started, going that route, and it helped me shift my mentality. And I was lucky enough that I had, another friend of mine who's like, here's some freelance work for you. Here's some stuff going on. And then came back.
Mm.
And it was about 6 months of scariness, but it was only about a month of really like being in a dark place, and then really realizing like, I can't do this to myself. I
Yeah.
need to focus on my business. I need to focus on myself.
Hmm.
And in all honesty, COVID was horrendous, but it really helped change my mentality, to
Hmm.
be honest. Like, it really shifted my mindset
Hmm.
almost in a better way.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's kind of how I came out of it. And lucky enough, I started to build this presence. I started to get my referrals. The world started changing a little bit, that stories were able to be told, like people were accepting that things have to go back to normal in
Yeah.
some way or some form at some point, right? So yeah.
That was a big question. I mean, first I have to like applaud. Being in a dark place can happen to anybody. And, sometimes it does require more than just actions, but even the action to get more than just that action, like whether you need to seek medical help or seek therapy or seek anything outside of you, it requires action. And I think that is a big thing, right? Even the action of getting to bed early, waking up early, sitting at your desk and treating your business like a business rather than a hobby or something that you just go to when you feel like it, that changes. That's a game changer. And that's a game changer again in your mentality because now you're approaching it with far more responsibility and seriousness than you were probably prior to that. So
Yeah.
I think even for me, COVID, quarantine, pandemic, of course, I always have to qualify what I say because I feel like I'm most definitely in a very privileged place. That's why it was
Yeah.
absolutely a blessing for me and my family. In even though there was a lot of sadness that was also existing at the same time. But yeah, I think it was truly a blessing. Parts of it serious blessings
Yeah.
our way. But when you're getting out of that dark place and then you were now getting back into your business and you started marketing yourself and you started, doing that. I feel like you also allowed yourself to receive.
Yes. And like to your point, it's that action. So in about November of last year, I came across this girl, Sam. She's incredible. She is a mindset coach. And I signed up for her course. You know what? I was always kind of like skeptical about that stuff. And obviously there's some people look at that stuff like completely far-fetched. Some people look at it like it's the best thing since sliced bread. Her course is set up in such a way that it's for the average person, put it that way. And it helped me because another point to our topic is I suffer from anxiety disorder. I actually also suffer from panic disorder. I've always been very open about that. That is not something that I shy away from talking about, even before it was something that everyone was talking about. I've always, years, I had anxiety attacks, panic attacks, lived consistently with that buzz of anxiety. I've gone to doctors, I've been to therapy, which is I highly recommend for pretty much everybody. It really is something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So doing something like that and going through something like the early stages of COVID was very, very, very difficult. I'm a social person, not being able to see anybody, not being able to see my mom at the time, like that was always something that was so hard for me. I come from a very big family. Like it's just like we were supposed to get married actually last weekend or 2 weekends ago now. Our wedding is like 600 people. Like, it's not like we are social people. So that was very difficult for me. And I suffered from a lot of things at that point. I was very worried about myself. And that is also kind of what kicked my ass into gear was to, focus on something that I had really built. And I kind of always had put my life into my work, even when I was, 14, 15, or 15, I don't know what's legal, 15 years old. I always worked like 2 or 3 jobs because I just loved it. And going back to that point of I needed to focus on something, and I was lucky enough to come across Sam's course as well to like really make me open my mind into like accepting new work and accepting that, because the business side was great, but it was my mindset that was still kind of in a place of just, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Like I was taking that step back in my mindset still, and it was still being, blocked. And between that and just practicing my own things and really focusing on myself, my fitness, my health, made a big difference for me. And again, now I can't even keep up. Like literally now it's crazy.
I love that.
Which is a great problem to have. But,
Yeah. So when you're going through all these things, and I can totally see how you picked yourself back up because you had the discretion and you acknowledged it. And now you're taking action for it. But what is your anchor? What is the thing that holds you steady when you do feel like you're like sitting in a tornado?
Oh, that's a really great question. I have to say I have quite a few. I have a few anchors. I would say my family is a big one. My mother, specifically, and my fiance. Honestly, is I've said it before. I'm very, very lucky besides, people, a lot of it comes from myself. Like I'm very open to understanding my mindset and understanding all of that. It's not one of those things that I've ever hid, like I said earlier. Like it's most of the time I pride myself on being able to catch what's happening. So it's one of those things where I've always looked to myself for that. And, it's actually taken me a lot to open up to Nico, who is my fiance, who I keep calling that, to Nico, for example, to say, it's so funny because it took me so long to even start calling him that, to say, I need a person, I need somebody. And that was a lot for me because I've always looked to myself for it. But, I was lucky enough to have the support system of people who just were there for me for everything. Like, and vice versa. I've always been there for others. Right. So yeah, that's a great question. Wow. I don't even know if I answered that to the fullest extent, but
well, I truly believe that there is something that we all need to have as an anchor because the world can get really crazy. If anything 2020 has taught us, that is exactly that. And for some people, it's very different things come out of my guest. And, sometimes it can be your faith also. It can be, your whatever family, like how you were saying. So it's very cool to see that because the whole point is that we're not alone in this. And no entrepreneur, no business owner should think they're alone because we all kind of go through the same journey. It just is packaged differently. And we all need something to lean on to. We all need something to hold us down. And it's okay. It's okay to lean on others. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have something that's higher than you that you're like, okay, hello, fix this. And so I think that's why I asked that question because we all do it. We just may not even realize it. So thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate that.
You're so right. Like you don't realize it. And one thing actually COVID has taught me is how much I actually need other people. Like like how much we really depend. Like if we didn't, I live with Nico, so it's different. Like we're lucky that we have each other. But if we hadn't been able to see our parents for so long, or my sisters, or it's hard. It's very hard.
Very hard. We saw our family the whole time, and we all in the same city, and I feel like it would have been, I don't know how we could have not seen them. So we were just ultra careful in whatever we did.
Yeah.
And it served us well. We really, were able to cultivate really good friendships with people who were already good friends. We kept a little bubble and I feel very much at peace. It wasn't like stressful, hectic or anything like that in that sense. So I definitely, feel very fortunate for that as well. But I'm going to shift some gears now. I'm going to let's talk about PR. I want to know, what is PR? And then also give us some tips on how we can do PR for our own businesses.
Yes. So public relations in the best description is to compare it to marketing. A lot of people look at PR as like some form of advertising, and it does fall under the marketing umbrella. I will say that, but it is different. Public relations is more focused at gaining exposure, gaining credibility, attention, building your brand's presence in that sense. Mm-hmm. Marketing is more focused on sales. So when I bring a client on, I'm always very, very honest in saying, like, I can't guarantee you sales. That is not something I can guarantee. I can't even guarantee attention, but that's something we'll talk about in a minute. But I can guarantee you that we're going to work to get your brand and your business in front of the media so that there's an organic story. Mm-hmm. There's that being picked up by some massive magazine. Like if you're a jewelry brand, let's say, and you're all of a sudden in Vogue, like that's PR. That's a big deal, right? Like that is, you're picked up in some crazy big magazine or Oprah or whatever, right? Like that's public relations. And in that sense, in the style that I do, there's obviously public relations on different angles, like celebrity publicists and stuff like that, which is similar in concept. It's all about brand reputation, but a bit of a different shift. I work more on the consumer side. So my job is to get your brand, business, product, whatever it is, in front of the media or in non-conventional ways. I used to do like events, for example, to showcase these things. I used to do, well, obviously in a pre-COVID world, I used to do events, but it's basically building the brand exposure and the credibility. Because like I said, if you're this jewelry brand that's picked up by Vogue organically, but you didn't pay to be in there, like you were in Vogue, like that's something you were picked up, and there was attention on your brand. Like there's that credibility there. So that's my job. My job is to build the brand presence, so that people recognize it when they are buying, right? It's not shoving it in your face like advertising or traditional like XM marketing. It's, I saw this pen in the magazine and, I really loved it because it was really cool. It told a cool story. I see it at the store and automatically I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Even on the other side of it, like building a business, like sometimes I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and it's really funny because working with these women entrepreneurs, I get to tell their stories similar to this. I get to tell their stories in a really cool way, and it inspires other young women entrepreneurs to go ahead. So there's a lot of different facets of what PR is. It's all, to sum it all up, it's about brand exposure and credibility.
Right. Love that. So if the listeners out there and they're like, oh, okay, PR, this sounds amazing. What are some ways that we can start working on our business's PR before we hire you? And then I'm going to follow that up with, when should we hire someone like you?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, I always recommend smaller businesses try to do it themselves. I say that because it'll really teach you a lot. I preach about this consistently. Like I do my own bookkeeping and good Lord, I hate it. I am not a numbers person. I am not a fan, but I did it. I've been doing it for a while because of the expense, right? It's an added expense to hand that off to somebody. However, I'm getting to a point now where I just can't do it anymore. So I'm thinking about handing it off to someone, but I'm in a position now where I can't afford to do that, right? My business is shifting. Now, in terms of public relations, I always recommend people do it because it teaches them what's going on. Again, most people don't really understand what goes on behind what I'm working on. PR takes a long time. Like, to give you a bit of a step-by-step in terms of what it takes, I'm coming up with a back end. I start with an onboarding process where I'm building media lists. I'm creating a pitch plan, maybe writing a press release depending on what the story is. I'm coming up with a variety of different story angles. There's a lot of meat that happens in the beginning, a media kit. There's things that are going on right at the start to execute a successful PR campaign. So then once we're rolling out, there's pitches. There's different ways of telling your story. I'm going out to the media almost bi-weekly. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going out to the media and pitching this story, a different story angle. So that's something to remember if you are going to do your own PR, is you can't just shoot out a pitch once, never follow up, and literally never talk to them again and expect them to care. These reporters are getting like thousands and thousands of emails a day. You don't want to be annoying, but you do want them to see and understand you. So again, going back to what I do, I know 95% of the time that my initial pitch is not going to get picked up. I know that. My clients know that. I tell them off the bat, it takes a very long time to get attention, especially as a smaller or new business. So there's a tip for you. Like, understand that this is not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of work that goes on behind it. So you have to have the time and the patience to put behind it. You have to look at your brand objectively and tell a different story. Like, I find, unfortunately, with a lot of entrepreneurs, we look at our businesses as like, this is the best thing in the world and this is what I have and it's all this and this is the only way to tell the story. Like, no. First of all, humbleize yourself a little bit, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, because once you take that step back, you can actually look at your business at a different perspective. Like, I look at a brand and I say, okay, we can tell this story angle And which is, okay, let's say we tell the story angle that everyone thinks this is a beauty brand and it's all natural. Great. That's the introduction to the brand. But then what are the other 6 stories that you want to tell? Okay, so this entrepreneur did this journey. This is one story angle. Why do you use this ingredient in your products? That's another story angle. Christmas is coming up. Here's a gift guide. Like there's a lot of different angles and things that come up in when I'm looking at a brand. So all of that to say is you have to consistently be on top of it. You have to consistently be telling your story. I email, like I've said, I typically pitch the media, my clients, every 2 to 3 weeks, no less than that and no more than that. It's very annoying to be sending them consistent emails, but every 3 weeks is a good way to look at it. And then I do a follow-up a few days later. Hey, so-and-so, just want to check in, see if you saw my email, whatever. I actually usually get more responses from my follow-up than I do my original pitch. And like I said, the first pitch typically doesn't get attention, and that's because they don't care and because you're brand new, and that's okay. Like they don't need to care. And how many businesses are going through and changing and shifting and not surviving, unfortunately. So they want to see that you're legit. It's the next few pitches that are really going to get their attention. They're going to see that first pitch, ignore it. They're going to see that second pitch and be like, oh yeah, they sent me something a few weeks ago. Oh yeah, I remember that brand. They're going to see that third pitch. Oh yeah, okay, you know what? That's a really cool story angle. Let me go look at the other pitches and see if there's a story I can tell. And that's where that happens, right? It's a progress. It takes time. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with brands where I've pitched something for months and months, not a response. And then 6 months later, they come back to me, or the media will come back to me and say, remember that story we talked about? Because they're busy. They're busy.
Who are you sending these pitches to? Are you sending it to journalists? Are you sending it to the people who are writing the articles, the editors? Who are you sending these pitches to?
It really depends. It really depends on the story. So typically I send it to the reporters, but I also have relationships with a lot of these reporters. So that's another thing to remember, right? Like when you're looking to hire PR, understand that it's our job to have relationships with these people and to leverage those relationships with these people, but also not to be skeezy about it. Like I have friends who, I'll text them and say, hey, like I got the story, what do you think? But it's also like, I can't have my client expect that I'm going to be like, you have to take this, because I can never promise that. And that goes back to the original point of, okay, I pitch everybody from a reporter to an editor to the director of fashion, whatever. It depends on, again, what the story is, but I can't force them to write the story. I have to be the person behind the scenes who is convincing them of different story angles and convincing them to tell the story and to tell the story on their own, right? Like this is an organic story. They want to tell it the way they want to tell it, which is actually the beauty of it, because it's almost like you're getting a review for free, like without, having to do much for it, right? So in some crazy big magazine or even small ones, I actually really love like the small blog reviews, because I think it's just lovely to like get, that interaction and those people like looking at it, because that's the other point I want to make. You don't want to just get one hit. You want constant coverage all the time. When I'm working on a client, my list of media is like sometimes over 200 different outlets, right? With different people with 2 or 3 people at each station, magazine, blog. And for that purpose, it's because I'm trying to get the multiple coverage. One hit in one magazine isn't going to do anything for you, right? You want to blanket, you want to cover all different kinds of angles and tell all these different stories in all different kinds of outlets.
Love that. I wanted to quickly ask you just some quick tips on how to create a pitch. What are some elements of a pitch that are super necessary?
Oh, the who, what, where, when, why. So that's what I'm going to say is the most important. You want to tell the people who you are. You want to tell people why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, what and where, or where sometimes is irrelevant, but you want to just get the message across, but also keep it short. Keep it super short and keep it super clean. Like they're getting 1,000 emails a day. They don't want to be bombarded with a 30-page long email. Like, keep it short. Bullet points is something super important. Like, just keep it short and to the point. And I realized that I didn't answer your question before about when to hire a PR person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that very quickly. There's a few different ways you can do it, either when you're launching. Like, for example, I typically, like myself, I offer like launch packages, which are like 3 months. So you can kind of try it and get a feeler and see what it feels like. But sometimes that's very early. And actually, a lot of the times it's very early for a lot of businesses. I usually stay in the success phase. So when you've been open for about a year and a half, 2 years, and you have some revenue coming in, and you have the money to spend, and you want to expand. And that's the best, in my opinion, that's the best time to hire, because that's when you have a little bit of a basis. You've already, built your fan base and your customer base, and you really want to just now grow and have the capability to grow. So year 2, year 1.5, 2 is usually my favorite.
Awesome. Okay. I love that. And I'm always wondering that myself. So when should you hire a PR, or should you do it yourself? And so I'm so glad you were able to, really give us information, especially on the process of, having a media kit, having the pitches out there, and telling your story and the different angles of your story as well, and being consistent. And not just sending one and being like, okay, talk to you later, but following up with that consistency. So that really, I think, is super helpful, just to even know the kind of the process of how that works. And then, of course, reaching out to the reporters and anybody that you think might be the relevant person. So I appreciate all of these amazing tips that you have just shared with us. And so before we wrap it up, I always like to ask some fun questions, but just more like, what's your favorite book? And, like easy peasy questions, but personal, professional, what's some of your favorite books?
Oh God, personal, Harry Potter. I'm a Harry Potter. I've always, my cats are named Dobby and Winky. Like, I
love.
Love Harry Potter. All of my friends know that, but that's a side point. Business is You Are a Badass. I'm obsessed with the Jensen Carriol, like all of her novels, or her books. They're not novels,
Yeah.
her books. Those are my favorite in terms of books, especially right now. Those have helped me. You Are a Badass specifically has helped me get through a lot of the COVID stuff.
Yeah. It is a wonderful book. So I would have to agree with you on that. And so what are some of your favorite biz tools that you use, whether it's an app or, some software that you use?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't use a ton because a lot of my work is like email pretty much, but I really love FreshBooks. I use FreshBooks for my accounting, for my, invoices and stuff like that. In terms of other biz tools, like it's mostly social media for me. So I really I'm an Instagram girl. Like I've always been, I can't do Twitter for some reason, which is hysterical. But Instagram for me has really elevated my business a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people hang out on Instagram. So speaking of that, what is the way so you obviously hang out on Instagram. So what is your handle and how can people contact you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my business handle is Seca and Co. So I'm sure there's going to be a link somewhere.
Seca all these links on the show notes.
Perfect. Also to say, if anyone is looking for an editorial calendar, so how and when to pitch, or a media kit guide, I actually have downloadables on my website. That could be. I know I just dropped that one in at the last minute, but they're really helpful, and they're guides, and it basically tells you what you need in a media kit and how and when to pitch for the editorial guide. And my website is secaandco.com. Or my personal Instagram, you are welcome to follow, is ali.seca. So Ali Seca.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today, sharing your knowledge and your story and just letting us peek into your life. So thank you so much. And yes, it was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was great.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.